My name is Harper Wilson. I'm 34 years old, an interior designer based in Boston. And after 3 decades of being the forgotten child, the one they overlooked, minimized, and used for emotional labor, I finally built something for myself. My dream home. But the night I invited them in to see it, my sister Brooke stormed through the front door drunk, shattered a champagne glass on my staircase, and by dawn, my house was in ruins. Slashed furniture, bleached rugs, broken china, red wine dripping down my office walls. And when I showed my parents the security footage, her on camera, smiling while she destroyed everything, they still asked me what I had done to upset her. That was the day I stopped making excuses. If you've ever spent your life trying to earn love that should have been unconditional, stay with me. Because this isn't just a story about family betrayal. It's about choosing yourself, finally and unapologetically. If this kind of story resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. Let's begin. I spent my whole life believing that if I worked hard enough, they'd finally see me. But with my family, there was only ever Brooke. I remember my 7th birthday more vividly than most people remember theirs. I'd spent months talking about the magician I wanted, showing my mom cutouts from magazines, circling pictures with hopeful fingers. The day before the party, Brooke caught a mild cold. Runny nose, low-grade fever, nothing serious. But just like that, my party became a quiet evening with a dry sheet cake and 2 distracted parents. No magician, no friends. Just my dad mumbling through happy birthday before ducking back into his office. That day was the first time I learned that in our house, one person's needs always came first, and it wasn't mine. Growing up in Greenwich, our house always looked perfect from the outside. Colonial charm, manicured lawn, white shutters. Neighbors thought we were the picture of American success. Inside, it was a different story. When I brought home straight A's, my mom barely looked up from prepping snacks for Brooke's soccer practice. When I won the state science fair in 8th grade, Dad skipped the ceremony to sit through another one of Brooke's bench-warming games. Even when she failed, like the time she flunked math, there was ice cream to celebrate her effort. By high school, I stopped expecting anything. I sang the lead in the school musical and got a late bouquet with the wrong show title. College wasn't better. They told me tuition help was limited because we need to save for Brooke's future too. I juggled part-time jobs, studied until dawn, and graduated with honors and $40,000 in debt. They didn't come to graduation. They were helping Brooke move after she quit yet another job. Through it all, Megan was my lifeline. 3rd grade, high school, even Boston University. She was there. Whenever my parents forgot, she remembered. "You're invisible to them when she's around," Megan would say, handing me coffee on long nights when rent was late and sleep was rarer. Now, standing in my nearly finished Victorian house in Boston, those memories felt like distant bruises, faded but still tender. The scent of fresh paint filled the air, mingling with lemony wood polish. Afternoon light streamed across the new hardwood floors. This house, it was mine. Every inch. Every color. Every nail. Years of work and sacrifice were finally materializing into something beautiful. Running my hand along the custom wainscoting, I allowed myself a rare smile. Then my phone buzzed. I stared at the caller ID longer than necessary. "Mom." Taking a breath, I answered. Her voice was chipper. "Hi, sweetheart. How's the house coming along?" "It's almost done," I said, already sensing where this was headed. "That's wonderful. Listen, your father and I are hosting a little family dinner next weekend. We'd love for you to come." I waited. There it was, the pause before the real reason. "Brooke's had a rough few weeks," she continued. "Some job interview didn't work out and, well, she's feeling fragile again." Of course she was. "It would really mean a lot if you could be there," she added quickly, "for support." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "I'll think about it." "We really hope you can make it," she said. Then, just before hanging up, she added in that overly gentle tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. And please, try not to upset Brooke this time. 18 months of sweat, savings, and sleepless nights reduced to a single fear that tonight, she'd ruin it all. I stood in the center of my living room, surveying every carefully curated detail for what felt like the 100th time. The soft gleam of newly refinished hardwood floors, the flickering glow of strategically placed candles, fresh hydrangeas in a crystal vase near the staircase. It was exactly how I'd envisioned it. Warm, sophisticated, unmistakably me. Jason popped open a second bottle of Merlot in the kitchen, while Megan floated between rooms, fussing over canapé trays like the social savant she was. The doorbell chimed, and guests began to arrive. Friends, colleagues, even Eleanor, my first mentor, who paused at the entryway to admire the custom millwork I'd designed myself. "This is breathtaking, Harper," she said, giving my shoulder a proud squeeze. I smiled, swallowing the lump in my throat. This night was supposed to mark a turning point. My house, my career, my narrative. Yet, beneath the surface, anxiety brewed. I couldn't stop thinking about the last family dinner, when my announcement about winning the Archer Hotel contract had been eclipsed by Brooke's impending mall job interview. I could still hear their voices. "It's a great opportunity for her," Dad had said. "So exciting," Mom had chimed in. No one had asked about my 7-figure project. A knock at the door pulled me back. My parents. They stepped inside, scanning the room with practiced detachment. Mom's gaze lingered on the crown molding before her eyes narrowed. "Where's Brooke?" she asked, like it was the most natural question in the world. I stiffened. "She's not coming." Dad frowned but said nothing. Before either could press further, the front door burst open. Brooke, uninvited, clearly drunk. Her heels clicked aggressively on the floor as she strode in, grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing tray, and raised it high like a mock toast. "Nice party, sis," she slurred, her lipstick slightly smudged, her eyes bloodshot. A hush fell over the room. Jason started toward me, but I held up a hand, signaling him to wait. Brooke's gaze swept the guests, pausing at Eleanor, then circling back to me. "Look at all this," she sneered. "All these people, all here to worship at the altar of Harper the Perfect." I stepped forward, lowering my voice. "Brooke, please, let's not do this here." She laughed, loud and sharp. "Oh, I think we should. I mean, you didn't want me here, right? Can't have the family embarrassment ruining your big night." "Brooke." Mom's voice cut in, shaky but pleading. "Sweetheart, let's step outside." "No," Brooke snapped, jerking her arm away from Mom's grasp. "Let's talk about how little Miss Decorator thinks she's better than the rest of us. Picking out fabrics doesn't make you special, Harper." I clenched my fists. "I've worked hard for this. You don't get to come in here and tear it down." Her laugh turned bitter. "Worked hard? Please, you've been spoon-fed everything your whole life." That was it. The gaslighting, the twisted narrative. It was all too much. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Brooke swung her champagne glass in a wide, reckless arc. The crystal shattered against the base of my custom-designed staircase. Shards scattered across the floor, champagne splattering onto the fresh paint and soaking into the antique Persian runner I just had cleaned. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Jason moved to intervene, but I shook my head again. "Everyone, I'm so sorry," I said, voice trembling but controlled. "Please enjoy the rest of the evening. I'll handle this." Guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some began gathering their coats. Megan quietly started ushering people toward the door. Brooke stood there, chest heaving, daring anyone to challenge her. My parents hovered nearby, unsure whose side they should take, but already defaulting to hers in their silence. By the time the last guest left, the house felt cavernous. Empty. I knelt to pick up shards of glass, my hands shaking. Jason crouched beside me. "You okay?" "No," I whispered, "but I will be." I climbed the stairs on autopilot, peeling off my dress and sliding under the covers fully clothed. My head ached, my heart heavier than it had been in months. Sleep came in fits. And just as dawn broke, a sharp crash jolted me upright. Glass, breaking downstairs. This wasn't just vandalism. This was personal, calculated. And worst of all, it was family. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, my bare feet pressing into cold hardwood littered with shards of broken glass. Morning light spilled through the shattered bay window, casting harsh lines across the wreckage that used to be my living room. My custom sofa lay gutted, its stuffing pulled out and scattered like snowdrifts. The antique Persian rug, the one I'd spent months restoring, was stained with what smelled like bleach. Cabinet doors dangled from broken hinges in the kitchen. My grandmother's china, smashed beyond recognition. Even the walls of my office, the blue paint I'd agonized over for weeks, now dripped with streaks of red wine. Everywhere I looked, there was damage. Deliberate, methodical. Upstairs was worse. In the bathroom, the mirror bore a single mocking message, written in smeared lipstick. Not so perfect now. Jason and Megan arrived barely 10 minutes after my frantic call. Jason froze at the doorway, surveying the destruction in stunned silence. Megan stood next to him, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Harper, this isn't just a tantrum." "No," I said, my throat dry. "It's not." Jason moved first, stepping carefully through the mess toward the dining room. "You need to call the police. Right now." I nodded, fumbling for my phone. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped it twice before managing to dial. The dispatcher's calm, practiced voice felt surreal against the backdrop of shattered glass and destroyed furniture. Within half an hour, 2 officers stood in my living room, their notebooks out, trying to mask their shock as they took in the scene. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" one of them asked gently. I didn't hesitate. "Yes, my sister." Saying it aloud felt like ripping open a wound. I led them down the hall to the small security panel I'd installed during the renovation. Pulling up the footage from the night before, I forced myself to watch the grainy video. There she was, Brooke, stumbling through my front door just after 3 a.m., using the spare key I'd given my parents for emergencies. For over an hour, she moved room to room, pulling, breaking, staining, smashing, like she'd come with a plan. Like this wasn't impulsive rage, but something she'd thought about, savored. The final clip made my stomach twist. Brooke paused at the bottom of the stairs, turned and stared straight into the camera. Then she smiled, a slow, satisfied, venomous smile. The officers exchanged glances. "This will make for a strong case," one said. "We'll need a formal statement." I gave it, describing everything in painful detail. Jason and Megan worked around us, photographing the damage for insurance. Every broken plate, every slashed cushion, every ruined piece of my life. By mid-morning, exhaustion settled into my bones. The air inside the house smelled of dust, alcohol, and betrayal. Still shaking, I pulled out my phone and dialed my parents. Mom answered on the second ring. "Harper, is everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice cracking. "You need to come over, now." 2 hours later, they stood in my foyer, staring at the destruction. Mom gasped, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. Dad's face paled. They followed me room to room as I pointed out the damage. The ruined furniture, the destroyed heirlooms, the vandalized walls. In the kitchen, I pulled up the security footage and let them watch. They didn't say a word until the clip ended. Then Mom finally spoke, her voice thin and breaking. "Oh, sweetheart, this is terrible." For one hopeful second, I thought she meant for me, that she finally saw. But then she added, "Have you thought about what you might have done to upset her this much?" The words hit me like a slap. Dad chimed in, shaking his head. "I mean, Harper, you did exclude her from your party. That was very hurtful." I stared at them both, disbelief burning in my chest. you're looking at over $100,000 worth of damage? And you're still asking what I did wrong? Neither answered. Later that night, long after they left, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my ruined office, my phone resting in my palm. On the screen glowed the contact number Megan had slipped me weeks ago, a private investigator. I hovered over the call button, my heart pounding. For the first time in my life, I was done making excuses, and I was ready to act. I always thought if I had undeniable proof, they'd finally believe me. Turns out, even the truth has to scream to be heard. The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and anxiety. I sat near the window, my palms sweaty against the ceramic mug. Parker Reynolds arrived 5 minutes late, wearing an unremarkable gray jacket, his presence quiet but sharp. I looked over your email, he began, flipping open a slim notebook. You want the full picture on Brooke Wilson. Financials, legal, personal, everything. I nodded, my throat tight. I'm done guessing. I want facts for the next 3 weeks, Parker delivered. Email after email, file after file. The first revelation came fast. Credit card fraud. Brooke had opened 3 accounts in our parents' names. Tens of thousands of dollars in charges. Designer clothes, electronics, hotel stays, all quietly paid off. Then came the DUIs, 2 arrests over the past 5 years, both expunged thanks to Dad's professional network. My stomach turned reading the police reports. Reckless driving, high blood alcohol levels, property damage. A week later, Parker sent over restraining order records. An ex-boyfriend. Threatening calls. Property damage to his apartment. The descriptions were chillingly familiar. Want me to keep going? Parker asked during our next check-in. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The next report hit even harder. Multiple shoplifting incidents from previous retail jobs. Each time the stores were reimbursed in cash. No official charges filed, no paper trail, just whispers and settlements. Jason sat beside me one evening, scrolling through pages of Parker's findings. This is a pattern, Harper. Megan's face was pale as she read over the printed pages. And your parents? They knew at least some of this. They had to. The worst was yet to come. Late one night, Parker called directly. We need to meet in person, he said. His tone left no room for argument. We met at the same coffee shop. He slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were months of bank statements, wire transfer receipts, and offshore account details. She's been siphoning money from your parents' retirement accounts, he said quietly. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. I flipped through the evidence. Transfer dates, account numbers, amounts that left me dizzy. How much total? I asked, bracing myself. Just under $200,000. The air left my lungs in one sharp exhale. The calls from my parents hadn't stopped. Their voicemail swung between pleading and furious. Always about Brooke's feelings, never about mine. Jason found me that night in my office, staring at the folder. What's the plan? He asked. I'm still working on that, I said. Megan joined us later, placing her hand gently on my shoulder. Just be careful. Don't lose yourself in this. I nodded, but I already knew. The line between anger and determination had blurred. The next morning, as I sorted through a pile of mail at my front door, an ivory envelope caught my eye. Heavy cardstock, gold embossed lettering. Richard and Catherine's 40th anniversary celebration, September 7th, Country Club Ballroom. I held it for a long moment. Then, without even realizing it, I smiled. Perfect timing. They wanted a celebration. What they got was the truth. I stepped out of my car and paused, letting the late afternoon sun hit my face. The country club parking lot was packed, every space filled with shiny sedans and SUVs. From inside the ballroom, I could already hear the muffled hum of laughter and clinking glasses. I smoothed the front of my navy sheath dress, checked my reflection in the window, and grabbed the leather portfolio from the passenger seat. My hands didn't shake this time. As I entered the lobby, heads turned. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. Cousins, old family friends, neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, all giving me the same wary look. There's Harper. I heard she's been causing trouble. Poor Brooke. Brooke stood near the bar, radiant in a champagne-colored sequined dress, holding court like a fallen celebrity making a comeback. Her laughter rang louder than necessary, her smile wide but strained. Just as I stepped toward the main hall, she caught sight of me. Her expression froze for half a second before melting into practiced charm. "To Mom and Dad," she said loudly, lifting her glass. The most forgiving, loving parents anyone could ask for, especially when some people in this family seem determined to ruin today. Polite applause followed. My parents sat at the head table, their faces tight, their smiles forced. A buzz from my phone. "Jason, you've got this. Stay steady." I tucked the phone away and approached their table. "Can I speak with you both?" I asked, keeping my voice low but firm. "Privately. And Brooke should come too." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Harper, now's not the time." "Yes," I said, locking eyes with him. "It is." After a tense beat, they stood. Brooke rolled her eyes but followed, clearly intrigued by the drama she assumed I was about to create. I led them down the hall to the club manager's office. The wood-paneled room smelled like leather and old paper. As soon as the door closed behind us, I placed my portfolio on the desk and flipped it open. One by one, I spread the documents across the table. Printed bank statements, arrest records, emails, screenshots, even the investigator's full report. Mom's face paled as she skimmed the first page. Dad stayed frozen, unreadable. Brooke let out a sarcastic laugh. "What is this? Some ridiculous performance?" I ignored her and started speaking, methodically, calmly, listing everything. The credit card fraud, the DUIs they'd covered up, the restraining order from her ex, the theft from their retirement accounts, nearly $200,000 in total. With every word, the air thickened. Brooke crossed her arms, her tone turning venomous. "You're obsessed with me. You've always been jealous. This is pathetic." I opened another folder. "This is a copy of the security footage, the night you vandalized my house." For the first time, her smirk faltered. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad's jaw tightened. Brooke laughed again, but this time there was a wobble. "You're twisting everything. This is just your latest way to make me look bad." I stayed silent. Just let the papers speak for me. And then she cracked. "You think you're so perfect?" She screamed, voice breaking. "With your perfect job and your perfect house. You've always thought you were better than me." I said nothing. Her eyes darted to the door, realizing too late that voices, our voices, had carried beyond these walls. Aunt Susan's face appeared in the doorway, pale and stunned. Behind her, Michael and several cousins stood frozen, their eyes wide. Brooke's panic turned to rage. "Oh, great," she spat. "Of course you're all listening. Why not? Let's put on a show. Fine. You want a confession?" Her hands shook as she pointed at me. "I trashed her house. I poured bleach on her stupid rug. I smashed the china. I ruined everything. And you know what? I'd do it again." Silence, thick and deafening. Dad sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Mom's shoulders trembled as she fought back sobs. I stood in the center of the storm, heart steady, voice low. "Now you finally know," I said. "The question is, what will you do about it?" For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for them to choose me. Sunlight streamed through the newly installed bay window, casting warm patches across the polished hardwood floor. The house smelled of fresh paint and lemon wood polish, a sharp contrast to the chaos it had held just weeks ago. I stood in my living room, staring at the wall where the bathroom mirror had once hung with that lipstick-scrawled message, "Not so perfect now." The drywall had been replaced, the paint carefully matched. The room looked whole again, but I felt different, not just patched up, rebuilt. An email notification pinged on my phone. Parker Reynolds. Subject line, Case closed. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Later that afternoon, Dad showed up at my door. For the first time, he hadn't called ahead. He stood there, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, eyes sunken and tired. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. We sat across from each other in the kitchen. The silence stretched long and taut. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, "for years of things." I stayed quiet, letting him stumble through the words. "We're in family counseling now. Your mother and we've taken some steps." His voice cracked. "We've closed Brooke's access to our accounts. We're not paying for her lawyers anymore, and we're insisting she enter a long-term rehab program." I nodded but said nothing. "I know it's late," he added, "but we're trying." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, listening, for once not rushing to comfort him. After he left, Mom's letter arrived. Handwritten. 3 pages of apologies and regrets. She admitted things I'd waited decades to hear. The favoritism, the excuses, the blindness. But I didn't write back. Not yet. Life, meanwhile, moved forward. Architectural Digest scheduled a feature on my home and business. My inbox filled with new client inquiries. Megan became my daily sounding board, cheering every small win. Jason, quiet and steady as ever, showed up one Saturday with a bottle of red and a simple question. "Dinner and maybe a future?" I laughed, kissed him on the cheek, and told him, "Let's take it one step at a time." By early October, the house felt like mine again, not just in structure but in spirit. I hosted a small dinner, inviting only people who had stood by me. Megan, Jason, a couple of close colleagues. Laughter echoed through the rooms that had once held so much pain. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood at the front door, staring at the new brass nameplate I'd just installed. Harper Wilson Interiors, Private Residence. A small thing, but it felt monumental. I stepped back inside, letting the door close softly behind me. The setting sun spilled gold across the living room wall, the very one that had once been drenched in red wine and broken glass. I watched the light dance across the smooth surface, whole and unmarred. Maybe this is what home really feels like. The house stood silent but whole, a reflection of the woman who now owned it on her own terms. What began as years of quiet suffering had ended in undeniable truth, loud enough that even decades of denial couldn't drown it out. Like the final crack in a long frozen dam, justice had surged through, messy but unstoppable. When injustice meets unshakable resolve, even the most comfortable lies eventually collapse. And sometimes, healing starts the moment you choose not to chase the love that should have been freely given,